Oh, now we got lights. Well, hello everyone. This is my first live, so it took me a few clicks to get here. I don't know if you got here, but this is kind of my green room behind me here that you see. I'll give you a bit of a tour later before we shut her down. But
So just tell us about your book.
so tell us about the book. What you thought so far, if you finished listening. Some of the people might not have finished listening yet. Spiritual question. How long did it take you to write your book? I started, believe it or not, it was right about this time last year, January 3rd. And that's when I started writing. I wrote a bunch of angry stuff for the first part, but then this book came out. My wife encouraged me to make it a fairy tale and get all my thoughts out through characters. So what you see is a few of the characters starting to come out in the book, and you should see three main characters so far. But it's how it evolved. It's quite interesting. It rather than just reading someone's biography about this happened and I went to this elder meeting and did this. I didn't want to put out any kind of a book like that. So I wanted to put out something that would take it a bit further, because as you and I know, through elders meetings, you never get to have a fair trial. I always wondered, in an elders meeting, why don't they allow the victim? Let's call us victims. And I've been in so many elders meetings. We go in and we don't have a defense. My first elders meeting, I was like 18, 19, just got baptized. 6 months later, I'm in an elders meeting, and I should have had a defense, an attorney. But so I wrote this book so that the main character Dole could go to heaven. Dole, call him, and he had someone to represent him, which was kind of cool. He had that angel that you just met. So that's where we are so far. So, spiritual quester, did I answer your question? Took 6 months to write this book, and I finished it in June, and well, of course, there was lots of editing. The book actually got finished before June. It got finished probably in May, and then there was a lot of reading over and over. We spent 16 hours a day reading, going over it, and then finally I finished it, closed the book. I'm done, and we turned it to the best my wife and I could do, and then we had an outside person help us. And he doesn't want his name to be mentioned, but he's we just have a little farm here, so we kind of sell eggs off the highway. And this guy comes to buy some eggs, and we got chit-chatting, and I just finished this book, and believe it or not, through this book I started to read the Bible again. So it was kind of interesting. I hadn't read the Bible for 10 years. In fact, I hadn't talked religion to my wife, my new wife, which we'd been together for 7 years. We hadn't really talked about the Bible, about religion. I was afraid to. But she knew that something was bothering me, and she'd get bits and pieces, and it just wouldn't go away. So she really encouraged me to start writing things down, and that was last January. January 1st, kind of a New Year's resolution kind of a thing. And so I started writing, and some days I was writing a couple thousand words. I had one spree there. I was doing like 5,000 words plus a day. I had this book up over 90,000 words, 93,000 words, and we had to drop it back, pulled some characters out. It got a little complicated, but we didn't want to write Lord of the Rings because then you have to have 2 or 3 books. And that's kind of the scale that my wife gave me. She said, and I really didn't have a clue, but she says, write something interesting like Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. So, of course, I had to watch some of them shows. And you couldn't really watch them when you were a JW, but I got to watch them because she had them all on CD. So I watched all these fantasy shows, and I found as an ex-JW, once the roadblocks were gone, there was no roadblocks, then the mind could just wander, and we could let our mind go to where it probably should go. And in this case, my mind went to mid-heaven to get this trial in front of Jesus and really get to the bottom of it, to find out what the founders were all about. Because, Jesus is the only one that can resurrect them, and we get the real story. So that's what I have. Any other questions? Do you feel happier now? Well, this book led me to doing this channel. So it's kind of interesting once I got unloading everything through this book and doing it through fictional characters. So that angry part that we have, we all get a bit of it, ex-JWs. In the Bible characters, I always thought Peter, here's a guy I can use. I can get my anger out through Peter in a nice way, in that way, where it should be. Because, let's face it, Peter cut that soldier's ear right off in the Garden of Gethsemane. Yeah, I got that right. So I placed all of my frustrations through Peter. It was fabulous because, and then of course I had the Bible examples to parallel, to use as my weight. I couldn't go beyond, I couldn't go beyond cutting Rutherford's ear off. And that didn't happen, by the way, in the book. But Peter was my vent. So I found it a lot of fun. Good for you. Do you feel happier? Yes. Hi, Gina. Yeah. Starboy 1, is there one thing that made you wake up and start fact checking the JW religion? Yeah. And that's, I got checking into the truth. And just the word, the truth, how the book started out that way. The whole thing started out, it actually had a different title, and it was called Judged Out of Truth. And that's how I felt, is just judged out of truth. They say you've fallen out of the truth, you're judged. And those are the 2 key things. So I started investigating this word truth. And I started with, well, how did they get the word truth? So I actually pulled up the old truth book. And that's how I learned this back in 1981, is they called it the Blue Bomb. It was hit the Guinness World Book of Records, this truth book. And I was 18 years old, and I thought, oh, it's got to be the truth. It's the truth, right? And then they sit you down and they show you the next scripture, John 8:32. Well, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And then they said, all those things you were celebrating Christmas with your parents, and going to the United Church, you're doing all that stuff. We're going to set you free. You see, once you know the truth will set you free from all those religious ideologies. And that was my first wake-up call. I couldn't prove that scripture, because when you really read the Bible and you look at the word truth, Jesus says, I'm the way, the life, the truth. I'm the truth, the way, the life. However you want to put it, Jesus is the truth. And the religion usurped that, because now you take Jesus equals truth, and it's so easy. Jesus equals truth. So now we go all over the Bible And when I read the Bible, I'm looking for that word truth, and I'm saying Jesus now equals truth. The religion no longer equals truth. It's Jesus. So now we have a different meaning to John 8:32. It's you'll know the truth, Jesus, and the truth, Jesus, will set you free. Well, Jesus shed blood will set us free. It makes so much sense. So once I got those two facts down, that's all you need to know to wake up. It's right there. Rutherford Russell, they usurped Jesus' truth. And today it's gotten really out of control with 8 men. So does that answer that question?
Yeah, Gina added a comment.
Gina, the cult actually teases us to check if we were in the truth. LOL, you found the truth. And they get angry. Yeah, isn't that the way it is? So we've been having fun with their anger. I think the more they get angry, the more we be funny about it. And they become the laughing stock. So I don't know if you have some of the t-shirts. My wife is right here on the website yet, but we have some t-shirts we designed. I think you'll like it. Penny. I'm interested to know if you have looked to see what part Watchtower is playing.
On the world scene.
On what?
The world scene.
Oh, on the world scene.
Yeah.
If I found what they're doing on the world scene?
Yeah. You watch some of the news.
Yeah, W5. We're in Canada. I don't know how many people online are in Canada. So recently on the XJW channel, you'll see, what's that babe that they call her? Apostate babe? Pasta babe put out a video. And it was a video of W5 here in Canada. And if you haven't had a chance to watch it, it's a really good take. And talked about a girl here in my hometown, Edmonton, and how she went through some terrible things with this cult. So I haven't yet seen any of my old XJW friends on YouTube yet, but we're new. We're only 6 months in. So we'll see what happens. Next one. No. So what is playing in the world scene? So in the book, I break the Watchtower down into 13 segments, and it's a little different than everyone else. When I came in to the Watchtower, I'm just gonna have a drink. My mouth gets dry. I've been taking audio lessons lately, so I've been online with this. I'll give you a little tour of my studio, but I'm going to start doing audiobooks. So this book will be out. My next venture is to put this on as an audiobook. And we're advertising this book for Jehovah's Witnesses, for all audiences. It's if you get reading this book, it's like a Disney book, and it gets you right into mid-heaven, and mid-heaven opens up. And, it's kind of how you read it in Revelation, the book of Revelations. At least it's how I read it. And then, we throw in a bit of our own fantasy into it. And, everyone has a take on what Revelation is all about. So I think you'll enjoy this take. It makes it fun. So JW governing body is a privy council. I learned from Google, Alexa, that the JW governing body is in the Privy Council. Google named all 8 members. Yeah. So what would that mean? Pardon me? No, I'd have to look into that. Some of the information that you guys give us as feedback on this channel help us to research stuff, and then if we can find some stuff on it, or if you can help us find that stuff, then we can do the research and put out a video on it and advertise it to the world. Hopefully, that's the whole idea of doing this channel. One of the things I've enjoyed, I started out the channel in June, so I finished the book. And the editor, the guy came to buy some eggs, and he said, well, I took a course on editing and newspaper and journaling and stuff, and I'll take a look at some of your work. So we actually took a look at, I wrote back in 2018 as an escape. I was doing a lot of Arctic work, and the Arctic work was a result of this pioneering work that I had started while I was in the JW. And I left in 2012, and I had all these contracts up in the Arctic. I certify fire alarm systems and I do security systems. So I was getting hired by big companies that needed guys to go away up in the Arctic. Like no one wants to go away up in the Arctic. And then to kind of know your way around, well, I was comfortable with the people because I went up and started witnessing, and you get to know the people. And after I left the Jehovah's Witness, I went to some drum dances and got to know the spirituality of the people. So I wrote, 7 books, 7 short stories. I call them novelettes, and I published them up north. I published the first series to the person in the community that they were into language, and they have what they call a lost language because there's no written language to their old culture, and there's only a few people that know this language. So I got into this town called Delaney, and I was a JW pioneering, doing this unassigned territory, and it took me about 2 years to find this guy. And he had this tetragrammaton, he said, in his head, this tetragrammaton. And I said, can you explain it to me? And it's, well, YHWH. He had God's name, and he knew about it. And he wanted to know more about God's name. And I thought, this is a very, very different call. And this is like the IT expert of the whole community, very educated man. And so we got to the bottom of it, and we ended up starting a study, and him and I became very good friends. So over the years, I quit the JW, and we quit studying, of course, but he did carry on studying in 2018. Like 7 years later, he wanted to study again. And so he did. And then he had to disassociate himself from me because he says I was demonized because I wrote these books about my journeys up there. And so 3 months later, he phones me back. He said, no, I'm sorry. It was all wrong. He says they couldn't prove 1914. It was all a hoax. They sucked me in for a bit, but I'm out now. So we resumed our friendship. And that's kind of that story. It's kind of a funny one. But anyways.
Second from the bottom, Gina is asking, what's the difference between a cult and a religion? What's your
Oh, they're all kind of the same thing as far as I'm concerned. I'm starting a cult right here.
Your bite checklist.
Yeah, remember I did the video on the bite checklist. Hey, hon, could I bother you to get me a drink of water, please? Sorry. Mouth gets dry. The bite checklist. It's I did a video on that. It was on my 5th awakening, 5th month in, and it has the big awake sign. And I went through that bite model, and the Jehovah's Witnesses fit right into it. And they even really fit the food stuff because when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you're not eating right. I'll tell you that. Because we end up running ourselves ragged, trying to hit all those meetings and assemblies. And then if you try to pioneer, because everyone, if you can't do something as a brother, I couldn't ever be an elder because I never qualify that way, but I squeaked in and got to be a regular pioneer for a bit. You had to kiss the right butts, but you can squeak in the right congregation. But I got in this other congregation as a regular pioneer after I was in for 5 years in there, proving myself. And then I hopped congregations, and they wanted to do everything they could to get me out of the pioneer work. It was hilarious. You see, it made me really angry a year ago, but today I'm just laughing about it. That's just how I feel. Did I get all the questions?
No, she's asking if cults are legal worldwide, and they're not.
What's that?
Second from the bottom.
What's your perspective? Are cults illegal worldwide? No, they're not. Anything a group is a cult can be. A cult is just to believe in something and follow it. Pretty well all religions are cults. It's whatever you believe in. Some believe in science, Tesla, going to Mars. Some people believe in, there's all kinds of beliefs. The world's just full of beliefs. So, really, the world is made up of all kinds of little cults. Really, even online, you look at followers. Some people have a lot of followers, so that means they have a lot of people that believe in their philosophies and what they're saying. So it becomes like a small cult following online. And I'm going to do a video on this coming up because what we're experiencing right now in this time is kind of a unique time. And if we go back to Russell, the founder of the Jehovah's Witness organization, he was in what they called the second or the third awakening. That organization drug all the way into the third and fourth awakening. And the fourth awakening, if you go onto Wikipedia, you can see this. It shows all these awakenings up to the fourth, right up to the 1970s. And there was some of these new ideas, Scientology, and some of these new religions, cults coming about. And people were waking up to different ideas. And this started back in the 1500s. And we'll go way back right to Christ, and we'll show all the little awakenings. And that's one of the videos I'm working on. And it's fabulous. It's interesting. And we are right now in what I would call the fifth awakening, where everyone is waking up from religion. And religion is now becoming obsolete. And that's getting a lot of the main religion people that are looking to, this is where they make their money. And they're worried. And when we go online and look at some of the videos, they're really trying to discredit spirituality outside of religion. And that's really what we're promoting is you can be spiritual, but you don't have to belong to a cult. You don't have to belong to a religion. And the Bible is actually quite simple once we start reading it. It's not complicated. And those principles are worshipped all over the world, from what I see. Yeah. What do we have? Penny, I love drumming circles. Yeah, those drum circles up north are fabulous. And I'm going to be running a program coming up. I'm not sure when, but that friend I was telling you about, he wants to come online. And hopefully he'll show some of the drum dances. We'll explore that. So my father's maternal side of the family is First Nations. It's a beautiful heritage. And I think when I was a Jehovah's Witness, that's what I was pushing for, is that we get to know that heritage a bit. And in the book, you'll find that there's a section that explores a little bit of the heritage. And we'll find that this bit of a heritage really coincides with the Bible, with what Paul talked about. He talked about this fight within us. And in our indigenous cultures, they talk about this fight within us, the white wolf and the dark wolf. And we go on to talk about that in the book, and it's quite interesting. So Penny, good question. So Penny, the First Nations were very abused and annihilated. Absolutely, they were. And all over. Right here, my tribe, my ancestors, now I never lived on a reserve or anything like that. I have a very small amount of indigenous blood in me. I'm like 1/16th. But we classify and as indigenous in this country. And my ancestors disappeared. They were called the Papa Chase band. So they're gone. And they sold their reserve. I lived in the area in Edmonton where it was, but they sold it. And of course, as things modernized, well, they needed more land near the river. So that's what happened there. Anyways, next one. It makes sense. Gina, JW Cult says religion is a snare. JW and a racket. I love it. Yeah, it is. That makes them a snare, I guess. Yes, for sure. The JW religion is a snare. I've seen some videos online talking about that. That's a good twist, because remember, Russell was using that religion is a snare and a racket. That was his big thing back in the 1800s. So now the apostates are going back and saying the JW religion is a snare and a racket, using the same logo or slogan. Good. Penny. When the Watchtower joined the UN as an NGO, non-governmental organization, when? When the Watchtower joined the UN, I have not researched all of that. I don't know all the dates. But what I do know is that they're hypocrites because they want to be in the UN. They want to be a part of the UN because we are protected by the UN, and they're friends with the UN, and they go to all these UN meetings because they want all the protection. We're protected. They say that over and over again. We're protected. And but then they call them the other hand. They call them the wild beast in all the literature. The governments are all the wild beasts, and in fact, they went to the UN to talk about them as no. It's the European Union that they're protected. They're bragging about how they're protected by the European Union. So the UN is another thing. That's a whole nother story, and I know some of the apostates are really looking into that, and they've always been on the list or signed into the UN, but what we're finding through a lot of the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, and there's a lot of elders and good people, Bethelites out there doing the research, and they're finding that the governing body has always lived a double standard. There's been a double standard going from day one, even burying the chemicals from the Watchtower at the Watchtower Farms, the printing chemicals, the ink, barrels of ink and stuff, garbage ink, from the printing presses. They were burying that at the Watchtower Farms and then cultivating it into the soil. And then that all got exposed. So there's been some videos on that too. The First Nations, Gina, they speak in both sides of their mouths. Yes. And I was watching one of the videos just the other day, and they were talking about some of the governing body members and questioning their mental capacity. I hate to say that, but when you look at a religious man that's leading an organization, and even if he were to think that babies are not perfect, because we're all, maybe the point he was getting at was that we're all born imperfect. Why would you ever get up on a stage and say babies are enemies of God? Why would you do that? Like anybody in their right mind? I'm sure there's another illustration that man could have used, but yet he chose that one. And keep in mind, friends, these talks that these brothers give, these talks go through the writing committee, they go through all these other brothers, they go through the governing body, and they all agree with that. So this guy's the puppet for the whole group of them. And this is what leads a lot of us to believe that there's got to be something wrong, where they don't have Jehovah's Spirit for sure, because how could you say stuff like that? Planny, please see the first part of my comment above. Did I get that one? Which one are we looking at? Perhaps you could just give it to us again. Drum circles, the First Nations, Ontario. They were abused and annihilated, the First Nations.
Yeah, I think we're missing a comment.
I think maybe we're missing something. Maybe just resend it, please.
Awesome. You could talk about how you choose not to watch too much news.
Yeah, that's a good. I found myself not really listening to the news that much anymore, and even in Canada here, we had all these burials, these unearthings of children that were buried by these religious groups all over Canada. And this was back in, these they called them residential schools. There were schools as Canada was being explored. It's kind of the last of the nations, really. We're the last. And as it was being explored back in the 1800s, they wanted to, I guess, educate the Indigenous people. And so they went in and into the communities, and they just took the children away from the parents, and brought them to these residential schools. And then over the years, there's reports that they were doing military kind of tests on these children, making them not eat for weeks to see how long they would live and things like that. Like there was some horrific reports that got revealed on the news. And so our whole country was, for a whole year here, has just been kind of waiting. The Pope came up and said he was sorry, I guess. And there was other religious groups all involved in this. It wasn't just the Catholics, but all the ones that I guess the government had contracts back then, and they said, who wants to make money and form these schools? So a bunch of religions got involved. Sad, uncovering, and I think maybe that's what you're referring to. But Penny says, my mother treated all of her children in a violent way. Now, please see the first part of my comment. So I'm not sure what the whole story there is, but there is a lot of violence. I'm not sure if we're referring to Indigenous First Nations communities or ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not sure. But the whole world is full of it. And I think there's an illustration I use in the book, later on in the book. And I talk about the world, kind of, if you could imagine, if you went to and had a talk with Jesus, and Jesus is looking down at the whole earth, and there's all of us, and we're all hurting. And what's the answer? Are we waiting for something? Are we waiting for the magic pill? And I think that's what religions have been telling us for all these, over all these awakenings. They've been telling us, well, yeah, there's a magic pill. There's a magic pill. And through the course of telling us that there's a magic pill, and they got us all waiting and waiting and waiting, and we're all waiting for the magic pill, because through the course of it, we just keep paying them and paying them and paying them for the magic pill, because they keep giving us the spiritual food at the right time, they say. And that they all do that. All the religions do something just like the JWs do. What I find with the JW religion, though, is it's out of all the cults, it's the most, what's the word, hon? High control. It's the highest control cults, the Jehovah's Witness religion, because it's really is harmful when you leave, however you leave, even if you walk out, they figure out a way to demonize you and make you worthless. So it's a very high control cult, and you can't associate. You have no associations, and this is the problem with it. Penny I would like us to know that the Watchtower is directing the JWs to preach and back up the United Nations Sustainable Development Plan, which, interesting. The Watchtower is directing the JWs to preach and back up the United Nations Sustainable Development Plan. Isn't that interesting? Huh, maybe they're the Antichrist. United Nations Sustainable Development Plan, which is the New World Order, thus the New World Translation Scripture. Interesting. Really? We'll have to look into that. So what you're saying, Penny, if I'm to understand this correctly, is that the Watchtower is in cahoots with the United Nations, who they were claiming was the wild beast. Is that right? Gina says, I'm perplexed. Who are these guys writing this crap? Are they scholars? None of this crap they write out can be backed up by anybody. So, yeah, I'm not sure. So regardless, when we look at the Watchtower, we see that its foundation is crumbling. And by that is with the internet, we can expose how this organization was built. And once we expose that, which I think is done, the apostates have done a good job online in exposing the Russell and the Rutherford, and how these guys were not prophets at all. They were just businessmen. And it was all about money. And I talk a little bit about this, actually quite a bit about this. It's interesting when we look at the foundation of the religion. And we know that the foundation is that weak, it crumbles. And of course, when they put out all the false dates and they don't come true, we know it's a false prophet. But when we look at that scripture in Deuteronomy, it says not to fear a false prophet. So it tells us that there's false prophets, but don't fear them. No need to fear them. Any other questions? Penny, yes, I'm true. I've studied about it. So yeah, we'll look into this, Gina, Penny. I think it's interesting. Wouldn't surprise me that that they're pushing a little bit of UN stuff, world order stuff. Who knows? I don't think at the end of the day, we're finding through this fifth awakening is where religion had us trapped. And what I found through my wake up call is that as soon as I kept on doing roadblocks, and there's many of them, many little roadblocks in our mind from this religion. I was inculcated into this cult for 30 years and I believed it. And then when I left, I still had all these ideas floating around in my head. So once we undo it and start undoing these roadblocks, then we can start seeing outside of the box, and it changes everything. It changes everything. So when we look at these religions and how are they getting involved with the governments? Well, they're all involved with the governments. They all rely on the governments for protection. The Watchtower says that openly. They're so happy that the European Union gave them protection, and they want protection all over the world. In fact, they want to be like clergy. In Australia, they're going to court saying, "Yeah, we want clergy rights." So they want clergy. They want to be like the churches. And now in Norway, they lost the church right. So, but yet in the phone book, they don't want to be under churches. In the phone book, you look up churches, you see all the churches, not the Watchtower. Kids all by themselves, the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses all down here by itself. They don't want to be by the churches. We're not part of Babylon the Great. This is their thing. I don't know if they've changed, but when I left, that's the way it was. And so now they want to be part of the churches. Why? Because the churches in the UK offer protection. In Russia, we want the protection of the Union, of the UK or the UN. And I can see this happening, that they've gotten into bed with the European Union. Why wouldn't they get into bed with the United Nations? It would give them a bigger playing field, I would think. So, yeah, we'll look into it. And the one thing we do know is whatever they're trying to reveal, it will be, or whatever they're trying to hide. Remember the scripture? It says, whatever is hidden, it will be revealed. And we see that in so many things. The one governing body member, it would appear that he has an alcohol issue, because some, and the Bible says it would be like children doing this. So a child would be like a man that perhaps is just maybe associated with them. And here's some guy who's affiliated, recognizes this guy, and it's exposed. So we know that we're living in this time when nothing is hidden, nothing. And it's all being exposed, even in the outside of the JWs, in the world. The movie stars that have been involved in child molesting, sexual abuse, and things like that, they've all been exposed, and a lot of them have went to jail. So we're living in that time. I believe everything will be unveiled, and the children will do it. A lot of the apostates are really, we're children, really, is what we are, and you guys are the ones that feed the information. Let us know. We do research. We try to get credible information. I try to use stuff that's somewhat credible. I don't get it always right, and we get corrected from time to time, and it's good. If we're going to be in this business of putting our videos up, it should be somewhat accurate. So I agree. So what do we have? The Gruber Spirit Medium guy, where JW got their inspiration, plunged into a deep depression. I'd have to look into that one. I'm having fun seeing how the apostates are shaking them to death. Yeah, it's when these guys spend all that money putting out programs, on their JW broadcasting, and they have to spend that much time in a program to really knock the apostates down. I say, good work, apostates. We're doing a good job, because that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to bring to light what was hidden, and that's what we're all doing. That's what God said. That's what Jehovah said would happen. So, which is part of the process, the way I see it. Penny, yes, please provide me some links. That would help. If you can get links, that helps all of us. How much time do we have on here?
As much as you want.
Much as I want? Yeah. So I was going to, I don't know how many people, but I don't know how long you guys want to stay online. I was going to give you a little bit of a tour and show you how I make my movies. As you can see behind me is just a bit of a green screen. I'm going to unplug my mouse here and I'll unplug the power. So when I started this, I finished the book in June, and I thought to myself, I better let my kids know that I taught them the wrong stuff all those years. I taught my kids from birth this religion, so I thought I better get online, and I wasn't new to YouTube. We had used YouTube. We were running a peat moss business years ago. So I was using YouTube to advertise some of that. And I knew how to put a video on, but I didn't know how to do all this green screen stuff. And I didn't know how to cut things in and do any of that. So my wife, she's pretty good at this stuff. So we started with just a green curtain. The first video had nothing, was just out in the living room. So when I wrote the book, I'll just show you here. So this is kind of my little studio. I'll show you it from the back here. And this is, I set my light up. It's kind of bright there, but I have a ladder with big light on it. I'll shut the light off. It's pretty bright. But so, yeah. So over here, when I wrote the book, it was right here. Where are we? Yeah. Right here, right by the fireplace. And I just set a desk up there. You see where the little Christmas tree is? And there's a little thing there. Well, I had a desk there, and I just sat there all winter and wrote. And I blew the dust off the computer, just like the book says. So this is kind of our little place. We don't have just a little 2-bedroom flat farmhouse, and so we had this little cubby hole in the place, and my wife had plants in there at one time, but so we painted it green, and see, I just put a ladder there just to hold my light, and there's a little shelf on the ladder, so if I have to do a walk-up video, I can just put the laptop higher. And you see some of my videos where I kind of walk around. And so I'm going to do more of those kinds of videos, but yeah, this is just my little studio. And then I have it's kind of rough here, but I have a window here, and I can shut the blind. I roll that down, then I close my green screen, and I look out the window in the day, and there's my horses. So it's a beautiful place to work. I'll put you back here. And then actually, one other thing I want to show you. I do. Right here, and I work with electronics. I have all my life. But this here, you see this metal thing here? And it's plugged into that yellow cord plugged into the outlet. Well, that's a grounding pad. And so that takes all the static electricity that we build up when we're on a computer, And my chair is a ball chair. I have it green, so I use a ball chair. I don't know if you've ever seen a ball chair, but they're kind of bouncy. And then you're always using your core, so you're never using bad posture. And that's important, and the reason I'm telling all you guys this is it doesn't take much to get into doing these videos. I started with an older computer, and you can just get Clipchamp or something and start making some videos, because we need more people out there doing these things and exposing the Watchtower. And you can have a lot of fun with it. I see a lot of mail. Yeah. So my wife is really good. She'll go through all of those.
Working the keyboard.
Pardon me?
Your wife's working the keyboard.
Oh yeah, my wife works the keyboard.
Penny
So
asked, do you have dreams that give you ideas?
yeah, all the time. Now, as a Jehovah's Witness, you start talking about your dreams, and pretty soon you're demonized. So you got to be careful with who you talk about. But excuse me. But with dreams, if you study dreams, you go into a REM sleep, and I studied that a bit. And 3 a.m, it's when our circadian rhythm changes, and this is when we change and we go from dreamland, and then early in the mornings and before you sleep. So there's a whole study on dreams, and then we go in and out of dreams every 90 minutes, kind of a thing. So I like going to sleep. I like my dreams. Yeah, I think it's good. And once we undo the roadblocks, we find our imagination grows. The roadblocks are Watchtower, and I show in a lot of my videos, how I do a Watchtower review is I just pull the PDF off the Watchtower and I plug the word Satan in on the search, and Satan comes up a lot of times, Satan, devil, and they use that a lot in the Watchtower. And so I see how many times they use it, 50 times, 25 times. And then I go and look, how did they use it? So they use it as a whip. And then they use Jehovah. They'll take the word Jehovah in the Watchtower outside of the scriptures about 100 times. And they'll use that to whip and to corral people. And that's how I study the Watchtower. But I don't read their stuff. It's designed to put wrong ideas in your mind. I don't encourage anybody to read it. I think it's garbage. Anyways, that's my thoughts. But the dreams are good. Once you undo the roadblocks, Watchtower will build roadblocks. Get rid of the Watchtower. Roadblocks are gone. You can now dream. And I think dreams are fabulous. Yeah. We'll be getting. I don't know how many like to read. The book will be on Amazon tomorrow. You can order it in print. So I got the print. This is just a sample one. So there's a slight change. I have here on the cover. It'll say new light. It'll say new light right there. New light. And then there's more. There's a little bit of a change here, but I never read any of this yet. You'll see it all online. There's also an ebook. Will be online. I think it'll be online tomorrow. And I will be working on an audiobook. So that's another process. And then we'll have that out on audio. So once I have that down pat, I have about 7 other stories, and I talk a little bit about the stories here. So I know I'm going to cover this. So because if you ask, it's other books, and I do have them, but I'm going to release them as audio books. They're novelettes, and they cover. There's a description of them in this book, a short description of those stories. So I think you'll like that. So you debunked all their false information. Yeah, we try to debunk it. We're working on it, and it's a continual thing, debunking the Watchtower. There's so much stuff, and then they come online and then they talk about some of the things that these guys say, like in front of audiences. It just blows my mind. but it shows the level of narcissism that these 8 men have, to actually believe that they're the rulers, they're the channel, God's channel to the whole world. Like, to believe that. So the only thing we can do is make fun of it, because it's hilarious. It's a joke, and that's how I look at it. We will be up later. Please check our website out. It will be up
Link will
there.
be up
Oh,
later.
that's you saying that. So yeah. So my wife does a lot of that. She'll read through this, and that's great. Any other questions with anybody out there? What do you think the first 6 chapters of the book grab your interest enough to want to know what else is going to happen? I hope so. It's a fun story. So
they are under spell, Gina says.
Yeah, they are. They are. I call it the Rutherford trance. And
maybe they're under your spell right now.
Pardon me?
Maybe they're under your spell right now.
Yeah, they are under a spell. My spell. Who knows? We all have that, right? So, any other questions? And then we're going to close her up for the evening. It's been a blast to get to know a few of you guys. And as we grow the channel, we got some cool things coming up in the future. And if you, a way of helping us out as newbies, because we're a newbie on the block, and I plan on doing this for a bit. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I have a lot more to share. And we can only do small bits and pieces, as you can't give it all at once, because it's just too much. There's too much stuff, because like Gina says, you go to bed and you have another dream and there's new ideas. But no, that's not how it works. Or Penny, yeah. So we're going to keep at this, and the way you can help us out is to share our site. And if you know anybody like Jehovah's Witnesses, ones that are just kind of slowly coming out, and that really helps us out. One of the things I'm going to plan on doing in my local neighborhood here is I plan on making some kind of a plaque card and going to the Assembly Hall Memorial night and the Kingdom Hall Memorial night, and just sitting there with my plaque card and videotaping all this and sharing it online. And these are all my old acquaintances, and this is like 10 years later. So this is going to be a big thing for me coming up, this memorial. This is what I'm planning. And there's 2 locations. There's the big Assembly Hall. They use that as a memorial. And I'm also going to do the local Kingdom Hall where I used to attend. And we're going to see what happens. So if you have any ideas, we're going to use a different approach. We're not going to go hard against them, but we're going to come across, if you're awake, if you've awoken, check my channel at Fixing My Faith, something like that. And nothing about going directly at them, because then they apostate us. But if we come from if you've awoken yet, and as they drive by, they're reading this, and people might take pictures, or kids might be in the backseat of the car, right? And kids might be looking at that saying, awoken yet? Yeah, someone at school was talking about that. So then they check your channel out, and I'm thinking maybe a different approach, a softer approach, if you've awoken yet, and help them out. And if they read this book, it'll help them really to wake up, because it exposes. It actually uses it's a soft exposure of Rutherford, and you have to get a way into it to realize, holy crap, these guys, they built this religion upon money and profit. It all comes out in the book, but and it's a story to get there. It's like a kind of an epic journey, really. So a couple comments. Thank you for your time and sharing. You do a great job, both you and your wife. Happy to be part of your journey, and we're happy that you're with us, Penny. Thanks for that. And Starboy1, I have awoken. Enjoyed your chat. Keep up the good work. And you too, Starboy. And Thanks to everyone, and we'll see you on the next video. Okay, so until next time, keep living your life with love. Bye for now.